Hello and welcome to another game review. Today we'll be looking at Gris, a 2D platformer developed by Nomada Studio, published by Devolver Digital and released in December 2018. We'll be looking at what it does right, what it does wrong, and answering the quintessential question: is it worth your money? And with that, let's get right into it. First up, the technical bits. The system requirements are on screen right now and they're fairly modest. It's not quite at a toaster can run it territory, but it's pretty accessible for a large portion of gamers. This review was done on PC, but the game is also available on the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and iOS. An Android version is currently available for pre-registration. While playing the game, I noticed no noticeable bugs or glitches, loading times were negligible, and performance was smooth throughout. There was one instance where I had two minor stutters in short succession, but due to how isolated the incident was, I'm not comfortable saying that it's the game's fault and not just one of my other programs trolling me. All in all, I found the game to be very competent on a technical level. Art, music, and story. Okay, I usually separate these categories in my reviews, but I don't think that's really possible here. And that's because the art and music are crucial to the storytelling of Gris. To talk about any one of the three in isolation would do it a disservice. Gris is one of those artsy type of games, and it uses the art and music as a way to hook the player into the game. One of the main ways it does this is through the use of color. Gris has this kind of watercolor aesthetic to it. The background art looks like it was painted, and actually, upon a bit of research, I found that every frame of the game was actually hand-drawn and hand-colored. That really impresses me. The game starts with a colorless background. In fact, the only thing that isn't black and white is the player character's blue hair. But as you progress through the game, you'll unlock new colors. The stages are colored and shaded based on the colors you've already unlocked. This gives each stage its own unique color palette and makes it stick out against the rest so that they remain memorable. The music is also used pretty deliberately. Most of the time when you're just running around, navigating the platforming, the music is fairly minimalistic, oftentimes just having a simple piano melody and maybe a synth bass line underneath it. However, at certain moments that correspond to things that happen in-game, the intensity dials up and it can feel like a wave crashing against you. A good example of this is early on, there are sections where the wind will briefly pick up, blowing you back. When this happens, the music goes from a calm, almost meandering piano melody to this intense, chaotic swell with organs and heavy synth. Then the wind dies down and it goes back to this carefree melody. So now that I've given you an outline of the art and musical styles, I absolutely have to talk about the level transitions where you unlock new colors. These were an absolute highlight of the entire experience for me. Everything about the interesting color design, the carefully crafted music, it all comes together in these scenes. The new color basically explodes out of the player character and the music is at its most intense. I'm going to show you an example because honestly, I don't think I can do it justice with just a description. That was actually one of the least intense of these transitions. The others, especially the ones later in the game, are in my opinion much more beautiful, much more impactful, and have a more intricate musical style. I really don't want to spoil them here, so you'll just have to take my word for it. As I mentioned earlier, the story goes hand in hand with the art and music. The story centers around the player character. She's technically unnamed, but the developers refer to her in interviews as Gris. As you might have imagined from my description, the story is all about her emotions, and I believe it to be about her struggle with depression. The developers have been pretty vague about the details, but one thing that's been made clear is that it's about an emotional journey. The black and white beginning is meant to symbolize a sort of melancholy, and as Gris follows her path and overcomes her obstacles, the world around her starts to show more and more life and color. The game is entirely devoid of dialogue. All of the storytelling is in the art, music, animations, and level design. And as I mentioned, and as should be obvious at this point, the game is really artsy, which means a lot of these story beats will be somewhat interpretive. I found that a lot of what makes this game's story effective is not the individual story progressions or even the overall message. It's just that as the game goes on, the tone shifts. You start out with very slow movement speed and a drab background, but by the end you have a litany of interesting abilities and the environments are absolutely stunning. The artistic decisions kept me engaged as I played through the game, and I kept wanting to see what new thing was going to be introduced, which color I'd unlock next, and how it was going to change the scenery. Usually when I play video games, the visuals and music are more like the cherry on top of the experience. I can appreciate them, but they don't make or break my enjoyment. With Gris, I found that the art and music were so integral to what this game is that it overshadowed the gameplay. Even as I'm thinking back on the game and looking over the footage I've recorded for this review, my memory focuses on the presentation, the art, the music, those amazing animations, and not the actual game that I've been playing. That's something that very few games have ever done to me, and it's something to be noted. Okay, so on to gameplay. As I mentioned earlier, Gris is a 2D platformer. You run around and jump on these platforms to traverse the levels. One interesting thing I noticed is that there's actually no failure state. You can't die. If you screw up the platforming, the worst that'll happen is you'll have to run back to the start and try again. I think this works to its benefit. An actual death that resets your position could have easily broken up the flow of the experience the game is trying to give. I don't think it would have been something that ruined the experience, but I do think having no death mechanics was a good decision. It's a little hard for me to pin down exactly what kind of platforming game this is. It's certainly not a precision platformer like I usually play. It's also not a full-on puzzle platformer. There are some light puzzle elements to the game, and by that I mean it may take you a few tries to figure out what to do and how to overcome individual obstacles, but it's not really very difficult. There are also some sections that have more traditional platforming skill checks, most notably these trees that will spawn and remove platforms either in a rhythm or will shift whenever you jump. This is fairly standard platforming stuff, the kind you'll likely see in a lot of decent to good platformers. There are some optional collectibles known as mementos, which are either hidden behind bits of additional exploration or a marginally more difficult set of obstacles. But even taking this into consideration, Gris is not a difficult game. I personally breezed through it and never had to try any individual obstacle more than maybe half a dozen times before I got it. I have to imagine that just about anyone will be capable of getting through this game, even if you're not very good at platformers. And I'm pretty sure this was the developer's intention. They're trying to tell a story first and foremost. It's not a game like Celeste where the main draw is its satisfying challenge. They'd rather not lock any of the experience behind player skill or difficulty settings. Now this could lead veteran platformer players to be a little annoyed or bored at times, and as someone who's played and beaten a number of challenging platformers, I kinda felt that. There were definitely instances where certain sections just felt too easy for my tastes. And even though I was enjoying the setting, the art, the music, it got to the point where the actual platforming felt like a bit of a chore because there really was no challenge to it. Not on a mechanical level or an intellectual level. There are absolutely times where I left that in-the-moment experience and was just kind of pushing through so I could see what happened next. Again, I personally enjoy tough platformers like Celeste, The Messenger, and Shovel Knight, so my experience and skill level is not going to be representative of every gamer out there, but I do think this is important to mention. The game was a little too easy for me to enjoy to its fullest, and I can only imagine that others out there will feel the same. As you progress through the story, you'll unlock a variety of abilities. The first thing you'll unlock is the ability to become a heavy cube. You'll also get things like the ability to swim and a double jump. These add new dynamics to the stages, and while I did criticize the overall ease of the game, the mechanics and level design are actually very well thought out. As I progressed through the game and got closer to the end, the number of mechanics at play made the game complex enough that on average I was more engaged than at the beginning, even though the overall difficulty didn't go up all that much. One thing I really do have to praise about the gameplay is that each mechanic has a variety of uses. For example, the first thing you unlock is that ability that turns you into a block. The first obvious use is to stop yourself from being blown back by the heavy wind that was plaguing you immediately before getting it. You can still move as a block, though you will be slower. But you can also use it to break crumbling sections of floor, to activate certain movable platforms, and to dive deep into sections of water if you jump from high enough. Every new ability feels like it was important and has its own place in your arsenal. Some games end up having a gish gallop of powers and abilities where they kind of bog down the experience. But with Gris, I feel like each new mechanic was a part of the overall picture, and I actually have to really give props to the level designer for actually making me like all the abilities. So in conclusion, what do I think? Gris is definitely a standout game and one that I'm sure is going to stick in my mind for a long time. The visual and musical presentation is wonderful. Those transitions are astounding and the story itself is powerful. The gameplay is enjoyable enough, but way too easy for my tastes, which did drag down the experience somewhat. Additionally, the game is rather short. I finished it in under 3 hours, and I imagine even more inexperienced gamers shouldn't take more than 5 or 6 at most. That's not inherently an issue, as I believe that proper pacing should come before artificially extending a game, but some could be left disappointed that they weren't given more game to play, especially if their gaming budget is limited and they need to maximize their dollar value. Overall, the game is very fun, though not without its flaws. Still, I'm very glad to have played it. So for those of you who've watched any of my reviews, you'll know that I hate traditional review scores. I don't think they do a damn bit of good, and they really don't tell you anything. So I'm going to ask and answer the question that's really on your mind when you watch this review. Is Gris worth your money? You can get Gris on PC, Switch, and PS4 for $16.99 or your regional equivalent. The iOS version is available for $4.99. I can't speak for the mobile version as I don't know how it differs from the PC version, but my judgment for the PC version is to wait for a sale. If you really enjoy story stuff and can appreciate the artistic message and intent of Gris, the game may be worth your money, but I'd say that the price point of $17 is a little high for such a short game, and especially one that doesn't really offer much to the experienced gamer in terms of challenge. It's still an amazing experience and one that I'd recommend picking up, but not something I'd be willing to buy at full price. That being said, Gris is currently available on the April 2020 Humble Choice from Humble Bundle. For as little as $14.99, which is cheaper than buying the game outright, you'll be able to take your pick from a pool of 12 Steam games, including Gris, that will be yours to keep. It's actually how I came to own the game, and it's a service I personally use and pay for. If you're interested, there will be an affiliate link in the description. This video is not sponsored, but if you use my link to sign up, I will make a few bucks from it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. Also, let me know down in the comments what you think of Gris if you've played it. I upload every Monday, so make sure to check back in next week. Follow me on Twitter at AdzTweets for updates and memes, and follow me on Twitch at AdzGames. My work schedule has been pretty hectic lately, but once things calm down, I'll be sure to start streaming on a more regular basis. Well, with all that being said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next Monday.
Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more.